Bernie takes New Hampshire from Mayor Pete as two-way race emerges. Biden and Warren are on the ropes. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be talking about the New Hampshire primary. Bernie Sanders has won on the Democrat side, and he's defeated Indiana former Mayor Pete Buttigieg by 25.7% to 24.4%, 75,000 to 72,000 votes. It's a pretty close contest. On the Republican side, President Trump, running relatively unopposed, walked away with the New Hampshire primary. No surprises there. Again, 85.5% of the vote. 128,000 people showed up to vote for President Trump, even though they didn't need to. So I think that these results basically give you a two-way race. Pete Buttigieg barely won Iowa. Now Sanders is barely winning New Hampshire. And so I think you have a two-way race right now. Maybe South Carolina and some subsequent contests are going to tell you whether or not, or basically who the front runner is going to be. Some people are making bets in that category. As for Senator Elizabeth Warren and former Vice President Joe Biden, they're basically nowhere to be found. You can't even find Joe Biden on this list. I have to click show more. Oh, there he is. 8.4%. Elizabeth Warren only 9.2%. Amy Klobuchar, basically, if you take all of the votes for Biden and Warren, Klobuchar got more. And so neither of these candidates, Warren and Biden, I think they're going to have a really tough go at it. They basically have very little chance of becoming the nominee now. Klobuchar probably in the same category because she didn't win either Iowa or New Hampshire either. And the reason for that is because three late deciding voters in subsequent contests, they're going to look at Iowa, they're going to say, oh, Buttigieg won. They're going to look at New Hampshire and say, oh, Sanders won. And so suddenly you're going to say, well, am I going to vote for, do I want to vote for which of those two candidates I prefer? Or am I going to throw away my vote and vote for somebody who probably doesn't have a chance of winning? What's going to end up happening is late deciding voters are now going to choose between Sanders and Buttigieg probably. And the reason this plays out this way, in more than 3/4 of years where no incumbent Democrat was running for president, the nominee had won either Iowa or New Hampshire, 1976, 84, 88, 2000, 2004, 2008, and 2016. Your nominee in the Democratic side, they either won Iowa or New Hampshire. There were two exceptions. 1992 and 1972 were that nominated Bill Clinton and George McGovern, respectively. They didn't win in Iowa, they didn't win in New Hampshire, but they went on to become the party's nominee. On the Republican side, since 72, you have to win Iowa or New Hampshire, or you're not going to be the nominee. That's the way it's gone so far. There could be exceptions one day, but so far that's the rule, I think, and there's good reasons for that. Iowa and New Hampshire are narrowing down the field, if you're Joe Biden, you basically have a snowball's chance in hell right now. The difference between Biden today and Bill Clinton back in 92 and McGovern back in 72 is that Clinton had a case to make. He had a strong showing in the New Hampshire primary. He came in second place with almost 25% of the vote to Paul Tsongas's 33% of the vote. And so he goes on, he wins South Carolina and a bunch of other contests. He wins Super Tuesday. Bill Clinton was called the comeback kid. George McGovern, very similar circumstances. He came in second place in the New Hampshire primary with 37%, George McGovern, to Edmund Muskie's 46.4%. So if you have a strong second place showing in New Hampshire, you can win later contests and come back and win, even if you didn't show well in Iowa. Again, looking at the Iowa caucus in 1992, Bill Clinton didn't even show up. Tom Harkin won that, 76%. Everyone skipped the Iowa caucus that year because Harkin was just going to walk away with it. Clinton only got 2.8% of the vote there, but then he got 25% of the vote in New Hampshire and then went on to secure the nomination. But Joe Biden, he was in fourth place in Iowa, fifth place, distant fifth place. He's at the bottom of the top tier of candidates of those who were thought to be viable. It was Biden, Warren, Klobuchar, Buttigieg, and Sanders, and Biden is rounding out the bottom there. Everyone else, they're pretty much gone. Andrew Yang, he dropped out. And the rest of these candidates, many have already dropped out, basically have no chance of winning the nomination. And so you got a two-man race right now. It's Buttigieg and it's Sanders. Now the only candidate, but if you want to say who has the best chance of pulling out, coming to South Carolina and winning as a dark horse candidate who neither won Iowa or New Hampshire, I have to go with Amy Klobuchar there because she had a strong third place at 19.8%. So maybe that's similar to Clinton in 92 or something like that, or McGovern in 72. Biden and Warren, on the other hand, have a much harder road, and surely late deciders in South Carolina are already taking note. The big question is, how long will Joe Biden's lead in the polls in South Carolina last? Biden was consistently leading nationally, and now the leads are dwindling. Once you get to actual states and you actually have to vote, Democrats may not want Joe Biden to be their nominee, but South Carolina, that's going to have to be Biden's firewall. He is in the latest poll, East Carolina U. He's getting 37%. Steyer's getting 19%. Sanders at 14%. An earlier poll by the Post and Courier had Biden at 25 and Sanders at 20. Steyer at 18. Now, what should happen is people are going to evaluate the first couple of contests here and say, Joe Biden, he might not have too much of a chance, so his support's going to drop, and it will probably flow into other candidates. We'll see how the thing to keep an eye out for are new polls coming out of the South Carolina, Nevada, and other contests. A rich undercurrent in the Democratic nominating contest is the impeachment saga, which predictably has harmed Joe Biden's prospects by highlighting his role in firing a corrupt natural gas firm, Burisma. They were under investigation by Ukraine's top prosecutors, and Joe Biden had the top prosecutor in Ukraine fired. Oh, by the way, it turns out his son works for Burisma. And that made him look bad. Trump ended up being acquitted and exonerated of all charges. Joe Biden, on the other hand, there's questions swirling around him and whether he even has the energy to compete in the presidential election field. I'd say right now, Joe Biden's, he's on the ropes. These campaigns, Elizabeth Warren as well, they're on life support right now. Klobuchar's not too much far behind. And it's going to come down to Sanders and Buttigieg if history is any guide here. But impeachment drove up Biden's negatives early in the process, and it is clearly showing on the campaign trail. It also highlighted the Obama administration's and Biden's role in destabilizing Ukraine, in overthrowing and pushing Viktor Yanukovych out of power back there in 2014. That led directly to the secession of Crimea and eastern provinces in Ukraine, and now there's a civil war. Which we are involved in because we're sending military weapons over there, these Javelin anti-tank missiles. But by highlighting impeachment and going after Trump on Ukraine, what did they do? They brought all of Biden's negatives to the fore, and they basically interfered in their own campaign, and they sabotaged their own front runner. It's clear that Joe Biden, he has been the Democratic front runner from the very beginning. But when you start looking at these new national polls that are coming out now, post Iowa, now one has Sanders in the lead. Sanders is, he's a national front runner in the most recent polls, according to Real Clear Politics. But Biden, he was leading for months on end. If the Democrats had never brought up impeachment, would Biden's negatives have come to the fore? And the green line here represents Biden. Ever since Iowa, his support is plummeting. And Sanders is on the rise. Bloomberg's getting a little uptick in the polls, but he's going to have the same problem as Biden. If you don't compete in these early contests, you basically have very little to no chance of winning the nomination. Rudy Giuliani in 2008 thought he could bypass the early primaries and try to have some firewall in Florida. And he did okay in Florida, I guess, that year. But he didn't win any delegates, and he would never went on to become the nominee. So you skip Iowa and New Hampshire at your peril. Everyone who's complaining about, I can't compete in Iowa and I can't compete in New Hampshire, pick your early states. Those early states, if you after you're done with two contests, you're probably going to be down to a two-man or two-woman race, as the case may be. or man and a woman race. Basically, you can do New Hampshire and Iowa first. You can do other states first. And those early states are going to narrow down the field. And people are going to start picking amongst those who they think have a chance of winning the overall nomination. At some point, you start, engaging in a game theory about it, and you say, "Oh, I gotta hedge my bets, and I'm not too certain I'm gonna vote for a clear loser." Like, is anyone going to vote? Kamala Harris might appear on a few ballots from here, but she's out of the race. Is anyone going to vote for Harris? Same deal with Biden. Same deal with Bloomberg or anyone else. You're going to say, I don't know. I don't think they have a chance. It looks like Sanders might take it. And so if you don't like Sanders, you're going to vote for Buttigieg. If you don't like Buttigieg, you might vote for Sanders. And that's how it's going to work. Democrats, in any event, they interfered with their own campaign. They sabotaged Joe Biden. Fox News commentator Sean Hannity has called it the boomerang. I think that's about right. In the meantime, the close race for the Democratic nomination between Sanders and Buttigieg clearly favors President Trump. He walked away with the New Hampshire primary quite easily. He's running unopposed. And so Trump's going to have a united front for the entire year. Democrats are going to be in some sort of civil war and fighting it out. And maybe this whole thing goes to a convention. Who knows? The point is the bigger the mess, the less clear there is a front runner for the Democrats, the more it favors President Trump, especially as you move forward. People breaking off are going to start from the Democrats. They're going to say, well, maybe I should vote for Trump, or maybe I'm just going to stay home on the margins. Enough of that would happen over the course of a campaign, particularly in swing states. And this could really put President Trump in a commanding position going forward. These early states are very telling. There's a strong correlation between your showing in early states, even if you're an incumbent, versus the opposition, and what happens during the general election. Helmut Norpoth, my old professor at Stony Brook University, has something called the primary model, Google primary model, Helmut Norpoth, and you'll see in the coming weeks, I think after South Carolina, he'll have a new prediction. He predicted President Trump would win the election in 2016 when almost nobody else was doing that. And I think these early primary results, they're telling you that President Trump is in a strong position going forward in 2020. Now, Democrats and independents watching who don't like any of the candidates, they'll be ripe for the president's picking as he exploits the chaos in the Democratic field. And I'll leave you with the close here. Who the Democrats choose at this juncture, though, is akin to reading a crystal ball. But in South Carolina and beyond, I suspect that Sanders' organization and his campaign's experience may prove determinative as Biden fades. I think that Sanders is going to be competing in every single contest, just like in 2016. He's the next one in line. He feels like it's his time. And that could be right. This could be Sanders' moment. You have a self-professed Democratic socialist. He might be the Democratic nominee. And I think that's going to help Trump, frankly. I don't think people are ready for a socialist. Maybe in a decade or so, who knows what this country might look like. But right now, I think this is Trump's election to lose. Or maybe, Biden could come back. It would be the greatest political comeback in history. Who knows? I don't think that's going to happen, but, we've been wrong before. The next thing to watch for, of course, are fresh polls from South Carolina and Nevada. Stay tuned. That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.